Good evening, everyone. Late Night Mega here, and before I get into tonight's deck, no, this is not part 2 of Gliss's Gifts. Actually, I was going to do that, and I couldn't find my deck list. Apparently, I thought I saved it on my computer, and then I didn't, and I have since, dismantled the deck. Basically, what I did was I took out the Glissa and all the artifact shenanigans, and I went with more of a traditional sort of gifts finishers with the two, one Elish Norn, one Iona, and one Unburial Rites in there, and I threw in a second Thrag Tusk, and the deck kind of it did decent. I felt it did a little bit better against the combo and control matchups, but then it ended up struggling a bit against decks where I was previously beating pretty consistently with the Glissa's Gifts version, mainly Eldrazi. And yeah, so I played that for, I don't know how long I played it for, it's been a while now. But yeah, that's the update I have on that deck. I was also running like a counterspell package of 2 Spell Snare, 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Mana Leak, and 2 Remand, just going for like all these 2 ofs. I also had 2 paths in there since I was, 4 colors now. Yeah, that's pretty much how the main deck was. The mana base, I don't remember how I made the mana base work. I do remember hard casting Iona though off of it. But yeah, I ended up kind of scrapping that, and then I decided to go back, since we have this new Fatal Push card, and to one of the other failed decks I had, the blue-black deck. Why do I have 61 cards in the main deck? That's not accurate. I'm supposed to take out an island. Haha. That'll teach you for being an extra island. Okay, so I did still want to come back and play this. I wanted to play Shadow of Doubt, basically. And I knew in order to play 3 Shadow of Doubt and 4 Ghost Quarter, because, you saw the 4 Ghost Quarter. You guys know how much I like these cards. Shadow of Doubt is still probably my favorite card to play in Modern. There's been a lot of... When I was playing this deck, there was a lot of Breach Titan going around, and a lot of Tron still in my meta. And so I wanted to be on Shadow of Doubt. Well, that means I either had to play the blue-white deck, or go back to the blue-black deck and see if we can tweak that in, since I had these shiny new Fatal Pushes, which aren't actually foils, they're just regular ones in my collection. I wanted to try them out. So I went to blue-black. And I kind of took some of my own advice and from the last video of this and moved the surgicals to the sideboard, and that was a pretty good idea. I also went down to 2 Stubborn Denials instead of 1. It just felt not optimal to have multiples of these in your hand, especially early in the game or in the mid-game when you don't have that creature out, you don't have a Tasker out yet to trigger the Ferocious. But I did make a number of interesting changes. You can see I have a 1 of Executioner's Capsule in here and 3 Fatal Push. That's because when I played this deck, I only owned 3 Fatal Pushes. And, I kept getting packs for entering the tournaments I go to, the FNMs and the Tuesday Night Magics. And they kept forgetting to put Fatal Push in my pack. So, yeah, I just played the 3. Although, even though I do now have the 4th Fatal Push, I don't know if I would play it, just straight swap it over the Executioner's Capsule, because the Capsule is pretty unique in that it destroys it destroys bigger creatures that Fatal Push can't always deal with, especially when it comes to like Eldrazi's, or even just the fact that Fatal Push, you have to find a way to trigger Revolt to kill something with a 3 or 4 mana cost, whereas you don't have to do that with the Capsule. Actually, the Capsule also, using it will trigger Fatal Push, so there's that interaction as well. But more importantly, the Executioner's Capsule is spot removal that I can get back with Academy Ruins when I need it. So there was that interaction. So I wanted to keep that interaction. So I did kind of borrow the Academy Ruins from the Sultai Gifts deck, and so it kind of lost a color and ended up as this. And we have the Engineered Explosives in here as well, and a One of Languish in the main board. And suddenly my problems against creature decks with this got significantly smaller. Who knew that putting creature removal in a deck would help that? Also for finishers, I basically took the best of everything that I had throughout my blue-black deck evolution. So I took the Tassigars and I took the Ashioks. I left the Vidalcan Shackles. I grabbed the Worm Coil Engine and also another new card, Noxious Gearhulk. This adds another creature removal effect to it and life gain effect, two things that this deck really appreciates having more of. And also it's an artifact, so you can bring that back with the Academy Runes. I would like to get a Torrential Gearhulk in here somewhere. I don't know if that would be over the Noxious Gearhulk or the Worm Coil or the Batterskull. I don't know. That would be something for some more testing, but yeah, I would really enjoy that. Remands, I went back to remands in this deck because there's just so many cards in here that are so cheap. Look at all these cards that we can cast for 1 mana or less. You got Inquisitions, Serum Visions, Fatal Pushes. You know, it fills up the graveyard pretty quickly. To help you delve for Tasker. Tasker you could even count as a 1 mana card. If you want to count Engineered Explosives as well, because most of the time you're going to use it for 0, 1, or 2. You know, that would essentially give us 14 to 18 cards that can be cast with 1 mana, depending on how you want to count the Explosives and Tasker. And so Remand and Visions and Shadow of Doubt and once Cryptic Command comes online, those cards can just help us keep drawing through our deck and finding the stuff that we need. Another big strength I found with this deck is its ability in the mid and even getting into the late game, where you can just cast multiple things in one turn, and that's how you end up either stopping whatever your opponent's doing or just pulling ahead and maintaining that control of the game. Because you can play Tassiger and Stubborn Denial and Fatal Push all in the same turn. You know, it gets a little bit silly sometimes that you're able to answer your opponent's stuff and present your own threat and just completely take over the game like that. But it does happen with this deck, and that's one thing I do really like about the blue-black control. So yeah, and I went with 4 of the Cryptic Commands. Want to keep 4 just because we do have a lot of small stuff in here, so we do want something that we're eventually getting into as far as the bigger counters go. Also, it is the only hard counter in the main deck unless you have the Ferocious on Stubborn Denial, so keep that in mind as well. Ashiok, another great alternate win condition. It can end up milling. The exiling cards from your opponent's deck can potentially screw up combo people. You know, exile their one and only Emrakul. Yeah, just all sorts of nasty stuff. It's good against control. It's decent against combo. Creature-based decks, as long as you keep their creatures off the field and then start stealing them. Ashiok it's a 3 mana win condition. You know, what more could you ask for here? And you can protect it with Tassiger, so there's that as well. So yeah, this is how the deck turned out. In the land base, I did make room for the Academy Runes. Still kind of followed the same principle of having only 6 non-blue sources. That's the 1 Academy Runes, 4 Ghost Quarter, and 1 Swamp. However, with this deck, as opposed to my blue-white deck where I have 6 non-blue sources, that deck has 25 lands, this has 24. I don't find that it messes me up too much just because this deck is running for Serum Visions, whereas that deck is not. So sideboard, we also got some new tools in the sideboard. This guy, Gifted Aetherborn. His main purpose is to come in against Burn. Burn doesn't really like this guy at all, especially in multiples, and especially when I can counter their Skullcrack, or remand their Skullcrack 2 times in a row, and then finally counter it with Cryptic Command after gaining like 8 life off of these guys. It also kind of helps against bigger creatures with the Death Touch. Mainly I'm looking at Eldrazi. Eldrazi, I would say, is this deck's worst matchup. At least it's the worst matchup that I found in the several weeks I was playing it. Yeah, I was consistently losing to Eldrazi. It was getting a little bit frustrating, actually. But this guy, I felt it slowed the Eldrazi down a little bit, discourages them from attacking with their Thought-Knot Seers and their Reality Smashers, but ultimately they just kind of sit there and wait till they can play around the card, and this isn't really a card that wins you the game in those matchups. It helps, but not perfect. Also, there's the Surgicals in the sideboard. Collective Brutality, I like this card as well. It just does a whole bunch of stuff. Against Burn, you want to try and use all of those effects. Fortunately, discarding those cards also helps you fill up your graveyard for Tasigur. Echoing Truth I like to have as like an answer to enchantments, especially things like Leyline of Sanctity. And then we have obviously the Sacrifice removal and another Languish for good measure. So, matchups. What are this deck's good matchups and bad matchup? Well, I kind of mentioned the bad matchup with Eldrazi. But good matchups, surprisingly, Boggles, or Bogles, however you want to pronounce it. I prefer Boggles. Well, that's just me. You have a ton of ways to interact with them. You've got Inquisitions. You have main deck Engineered Explosives. You get Engineered Explosives in Academy of Ruins. Game 1, good game. You've won that. They can't do much about it Game 1. Even Game 2, there's probably very little they can do about it. Inquisitions to take their big stuff, or their, I shouldn't say big stuff, they don't have a lot of big stuff. Take their scariest stuff out of their hand, or even if you're on the play, perhaps take a hexproof creature out of their hand before they can even play it. Stubborn Denial, a cheap counter to an early aura. Shadow of Doubt doesn't do much in that matchup. Languish, it can kill their stuff even if it has totem armors attached to it. As long as it has 4 toughness or less, it will be dead. And totem armor will not save it. And Fatal Push, while it can't hit their hexproof guys, it can still take out their Spirit Dancers. And post-board, things get even worse for them because you can Echoing Truth to bounce their enchantments, allowing your Tasigur to block favorably against one of their guys, or to bounce their Leyline of Sanctity so you can start using Tribute to Hunger or Inquisition on them. And then a second Languish as well. So other decks, this deck likes Scape Shift and Scape Shift / Breach Titan, whatever you want to call it. Turns out that deck likes to search its deck a lot. And when one of our main cards stops them from searching decks, and we can blow up their lands at the same time, things tend to go pretty favorably for you, especially when you back that up with 4 Cryptic Commands. And Tron is actually a fairly decent match as well. Again, with the Shadow of Doubt, the 4 Ghost Quarters, and then sideboard you've got the 3 Surgicals. You can permanently take them off of Tron. And once you permanently take them off of Tron, dropping an Ashiok and just keep plussing it up until you eventually ultimate is another thing. Even in Game 1 against Tron, I've had like an Ashiok on board getting ready to ultimate. You know, I've been keeping him off of Tron with the Shadow of Doubts and the Ghost Quarters, and even using Cryptic Command to bounce a Tron land, just to make sure they don't have they don't ever have more than two different types of Tron lands on the field at once, and then ultimating Ashiok with just after using Cryptic to bounce their Tron land. That's also pretty brutal. So yeah, there's a lot of things that this deck can also do against Tron. Not sure how many control decks can say that they would most prefer to play against Boggles, Tron, and Breach Titan, but this would be one of them. So yeah, maybe there's some other sideboard stuff I can change, some other things I could tweak. I do feel this is significantly better than my last attempt at this deck. You know, maybe there's something in here I can tweak for the Eldrazi matchup. Maybe I don't need where is it? Maybe I don't need the spell bombs. Maybe I need more executioner's capsules or something. Who knows? Or maybe even just some Doom Blades. But I do feel this deck is a lot better. And I feel like if I put more time and effort into it like I did some of my past decks, like the blue-white Shadow of Doubt deck, I feel that this could become one of my upper level decks. I feel it's pretty good. I like what it does. It's pretty consistent at what it does. I love all of these cheap cards here. All these 1 and 2 mana cards. Really helps for controlling the game. So yeah, next time we're going to do something a little bit differently. What we're going to do is, well, I'll tell you, we're going to be playing Blood Moon, but this time I'm going to do the deck evolution a little bit differently. Instead of just showing you guys a finalized product or a product where I'm stopping the deck or putting the deck down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys the first initial deck list, and then every week that I play this, it'll probably be once a week. After Tuesday and Friday night, I will most likely play the same list both nights. If not, I'll tell you what minor things I tweak between there. But after that, I will be doing a once a week update on what worked, what didn't work, what cards I want to change, what stuff I'm going to try out. Because there's, in building the first initial deck list for this, there's a ton of stuff that I didn't get to put in the main deck. So there's a ton of things to try out and tweak, and I'm really going to try and stick with this deck longer than other projects that I have been lately. I don't know, I just feel like in Modern, if a deck isn't working, well, it's time for me to take a break from it, and I'm going to go and play something else, because I have, you know, a dozen or so tried and tested decks that will either work wonderfully or at least I know will be decent and make me feel good and give me motivation to go back and try other things again. But I'm going to try and make a commitment to sticking with the Blue-Red Blood Moon deck, and we're going to discuss that more next time.